All right, there you go. All right, it is 6 o'clock. We'll go ahead and get started with the work session of the St. Charles City County Library Board of Trustees. First item up is the review of the preliminary fiscal year 26 budget. I'll pass it to you.
All good.
All right.
So the board members all should have a copy of this item in your packet. Got it. And do we hand them a copy or do I need to hand out a copy comparison?
Oh, it's. I did not hand that out.
Okay,
was
right
not
here?
sure when you were.
That's both like the club.
Fiscal year one. The one page one. That one.
Right here. The other, the
Budget summary.
this one, do we make a copy of the board?
Oh, it's in the very back
That's in the very back of their packet.
of their, well, of their budget. There's.
Right, so yes.
Yeah, sorry.
This document, the 25 budget. Like that. Yeah.
Yep.
And if you flip, just so we're on the same page, just I think it'd make it easier to kind of compare you. The difference between 25 and 26, so it's on page 2, 3, however you look at it. So that's what we this package, the 25.
That'll be part of this right here. This,
Okay.
it'll be like the back behind there.
And if you just flip it to this page. That's fiscal year 25 budget. Put side by side with the fiscal year 26. You can kind of put that picture over these. So if you look at the 26 budget, we're anticipating that the revenues would be 25,630,000. Salary and benefits would be 16,853,712. Materials, which is our collection of both digital and paper, just shy of 4 million, 3,999,200. Operations 2,895,000. Technology and telecom 1,354,000. And what I want to kind of point out is we pay attention to the percentages in the 26 budget on the far left hand side. That's basically the percentage of each of those major categories to the overall total expenditures. So that you can see that salary and benefits would be 67.14, materials 15.93, operations 11.54, and then 5.33 on technology and telecom. And so you then look at the 25 budget, you'll see the same set of numbers for comparison. That salary and benefits of projected in 26, and this includes a cost of living increase of 2.4% for our staff, would go from 14,312,910 to 60,852,712. So 2.5 million increase in that line. That is basically implementation of the compensation plan that was approved by the board last year, and then backfilling the positions associated with the reopening of Spencer and Mendor Fidel. Brings that line up to that number. The materials budget, we talked about this a couple meetings ago and showed that we are, reducing that number. Last year, they equated to a 19.31. And this year, blend that down to 15.93. Public library standards should said if we say between 15 and 20%, that is what's recommended. So we are within that 15 to 20%, but instead of being at the top of that range, we are now the operation side, 12.13 to 11.54. Dollar amount and percentages are very similar. The same thing with technology and telecom. It's 5.74, 5.39. Percentages and dollar amounts are very similar as well. So that's the biggest change in this year's budget is the salary and benefits line. Due to implementation of the compensation plan and backfilling of open positions or positions that associated with the closure of MK and temporary closure of Spencer Care and Construction. The items I want to highlight on this, if we go back through the comparison as well, is that if you look at the general fund net surplus or deficit, in 25 we had a surplus. So if you look at the total revenues by our basically district expenditures minus capital of 22, we had $2 million, $2,073,776 last year. Based on this draft budget, that number is reduced to $527,983. Each year, we do need to spend money on just keeping these buildings open. Everybody, what we're looking at is this one right here.
Yeah.
And then on the very back, if you open up the 25, yep, you got it. Second page, just looking at the two, run through that comparison for the board members. The capital project last year, we had estimated about 4.2 million. That's basically a lot of that associated with the renovations at Spencer and MK. And in this year, 1.8 million looking at basic improvements, and we'll go through that capital project list a little more detail as we walk through. So reducing that significantly by about 50% reduction, over 55%, I think 55% reduction there. Total expenditures for this year would come out to be 26,915,517, which would put us at spending from our reserve 1,285,517. So we'll be spending $1.2 million more than we have coming in this year. That's something I think, I want to make sure that you're thinking about, and we decide whether that is where the board wants to be, or do you want to reduce that so that we're at a balanced budget? Or do you, so that's one of those decision points for the board to consider is, do we want to spend our reserve? If we do, what does that dollar amount to be? This budget is essentially 1.3. That needs to be reduced. We can talk about areas that, we could look at potential reductions. Or if this needs to be balanced, then that, we need to have a broader conversation. The box below, if you look at 25, it was anticipated with the capital spending from our reserves that we'd have an ending fund balance of 28,355,612. And if you take this budget out, we'd be at an ending fund balance of 28,965,373. So basically our ending fund balance as an organization stays relatively stable, even though we're spending down a part of that fund balance. So that's kind of big picture where we'd be at. You flip to the second page of the budget. There's a couple items here that we need to make a point to that quickly that we would need to probably look at and refine prior to the June meeting. If you go down under revenue, most of the numbers look good, except the one that we still are working through is the investment earnings. What's projected in this budget is that we'd have 224,515. Part of that is that our investments are coming due that are in fixed income and the interest rates starting to decline. So it shows that that's reflected in that number. There may be some room to move that up because in 2024, we were at 588,729. That was fiscal year 24. And this year, we're on track of at 629,000. So that's a fairly significant decrease. We may be a little bit conservative on that number, so there could be some room to move that. If you look under salary and benefits, going down, what's in the budget is 14,745,955. Actually, no, excuse me. What's in the budget is 14,312,910. What we are on track of spending on salary and benefits in this year is the 14,745,955. $955. So we are most likely gonna overspend on our salary and benefits in the fiscal year 25 by $433 and $45, which is about equal to how much we underestimated in 25 budget for investment income. So that's essentially where we're covering that additional salary and benefits for this fiscal year, is that we did underestimate the investment income in 2025 versus what we actually are again. So initially, when I saw that negative 433, became more nervous than I was. Although we did have an offset. If you flip about two more pages back, you'll get a page that looks like this. Or more, I think. Yep. The 2026 personal budget full-time equivalent FTEs.
Yeah.
This is.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. So this one, one more, I think.
She's there.
Oh, is she there? Okay.
Which one?
Yep. All right, so what this shows is our equivalent FTE count. So in the 2026 budget, we were able to reduce the overall FTE count to 201.95, so basically 202 equivalent FTEs. That is down from 208.2. So that is a reduction of six FTE equivalent FTE within this budget.
And was that the result of leaving open positions unfilled?
Yeah, so that was not filling basically positions like the director of IT, the director of branch services. We had a training coordinator position and a few others. So those were all basically positions that were in the previous budget that were vacant that we were able to eliminate in this budget, that we're recommending that it be eliminated in this budget.
And they'd been unfilled for some time, hadn't they?
They haven't until some
Without, at least as far as I know, no major complaints from staff or the public about those positions not being filled.
There's no major complaints about that. I think that we are, there are issues. Zach has been filling in as the IT director or manager for quite a bit of time.
Okay.
And so he's doing a great job in that role and taking on additional responsibilities at no additional pay. So that hurts us as an organization. I appreciate him doing that. The director of branch services is a position that was filled several years ago. That person helps coordinate branch service operations, obviously. And so our branch managers and regional branch managers are having to kind of coordinate a little bit more and probably aren't quite getting the training and support that they would if that position was filled. So I think there are some subtle things, but it's not, they are management level positions. So our patrons are not
So
seeing.
it's not that they weren't missed at all, but they weren't mortally painful.
They weren't what?
They weren't causing severe
Correct. We are,
going unfilled.
other people are picking up we are shifting, they've been unfilled enough that others have basically picked up those duties and are running with those additional duties.
Thank you.
And so I think we can continue with that. And I think we've had that discussion with the leadership team here at the library, realizing that this is where we are as an organization. We are tight financially. We are financially healthy. We have very little debt and we have a steady revenue source coming in. We are, have enough people to operate the branches in a very highly successful way. We're here to deliver quality services. But yeah, those positions were in the budget. They were at one time vetted out as being able to support the operations. We've been able to live without them. But I just want to point that out. That does take those completely off of the books.
Okay.
If we go to the very next page, that is the materials budget. page. This shows the actual expenditures for materials broken down by the various categories. And you can see in 2021 that the materials budget was 3,148,808. 2022, it increased to 3,477,525. 3,576,175. In 24 is when you actually saw a significant increase. We've talked about this previously. It increased by nearly 20%, 4,482,525. 25 budget hit at 4,399,200. So this is a reduction in the materials budget to take it to the 3,999,200, which is a reduction of over 400,000, nearly right about 9%. But it's really in that historic range of where we would be. I did run the numbers looking at, if you looked at the 2023 budget. So if you took that as the baseline, in 22, there was a 10% increase. In 23, that is increased by 2.84. So if you took the 3,576,175, and you just took an inflationary increase of 3% per year to see where that budget would be in 2026, the number would be 3,908,000. 3,908,000. So we are slightly above a 3% increase annually in the materials budget. So it's pretty close to where you'd expect that it should be if it would have grown based on inflation. So even though the materials budget saw a significant decrease, I don't believe it's out of line with where, it would have grown on its own if it would have grown at the same rate as inflation. We all know that e-media and some of those other items are growing faster than inflation.
Yeah.
So that's also why I think it makes sense they have it a little bit above 3%.
Yeah.
The very next page is our capital. So going back to the first page, what we're showing is that we have potentially 1,813,500 in capital expenditures. This gives that breakdown by branch of how we come up to that number of 1,813,500. Is there room to trim that back? Sure. I mean, there are some items in here that we could look at if the board would like to, that we could consider deferring. But basically that it does not include any major renovation. So if you look at this, CS is central services. Central services would include 2 vehicle replacements. I believe those I think are an outreach. I have to ask Julie again on that. I'll get back to you on where those 2 vehicles, because I may be wrong on the bookmobile. The floor needs to be replaced. The vinyl covering or that matrix is just it's seen its end of life. Replacing of ADD machines district wide, is thrown within that. Cabling or broadcasting meetings out of this room, is shown there. And then replacement of computers, laptop and monitors and iPads. So although it's central services, you'll see that many of these items are really there to support branch operations. Okay. It just is what it is. Other things within central services, building surge protector, building access control, some safety bollards, and then a minor amount of carpet replacement on the second floor. If you go to the Augusta branch, exterior camera, digital display, parking lot following. Boone Trail, parking lot, steel stripe, exterior camera, digital display. Carver Parkway, which is probably one of the bigger items on this list, is a roof replacement. That roof is leaking, so it's critical that be replaced. Parking lot repair, steel stripe, and some bollards. The bollards, you'll see that kind of consistently is because we have had patrons actually run into the Deer Run building or come very close to it, jumping the curb. And so for both the safety of the patrons and our building, That's why we thought it would make sense to, at least in some of these spots, critical, close to the doors, that we provide that protection. Cliffview, parking lot repair, seal stripe, bollards, gear run. You know, do we defer the restroom renovations? $70,000? Sure, we could. It's obviously one of those items, is one of the branches that was considered for closure. And restrooms are outdated, so if we were going to invest in something that is more aesthetics, like a restroom renovation, I would prefer that we do it in Deer Run, McClay, or Kisker, so that we are demonstrating to the public that we're not gonna close these branches, we're actually reinvesting in them. So that's why you see that in there, but again, if the board says we need to reduce $70,000, that is a potential item. Public furniture, tables and chairs, the audio visual system replacement, exterior cameras, and parking lot replacement. So very basic overall in that branch. It's $153,000. Go to Kevin Lindeman. The biggest item is the parking lot. There's some soundproofing in the staff office, and then there's a kid area enhancement in there, and part of that is being funded, I believe, through the foundation. Almost all of that. Building access control is another item. Go to Kisker, a meeting room divider. So that's the room that would divide the larger room into separate. That divider, if you look at it, is being held together literally by duct tape, and I don't think the baling wire, but there's probably, I'm pretty sure there was duct tape on it. Yeah. But it's one of those things that the public can see, and that just really is part of that user experience. Some replacement of the teen area furniture, sliding, the automatic sliding doors, audio visual equipment, kids area wall table, and then parking lot. Go to McClay, there's some public furniture, meeting room divider. Again, they have the same issue there, this very old divider, audio visual, and parking lot. Spencer, you have a heating, cooling, retro commissioning solutions. I think that study has started. I know the board has talked about that in the past, so that's if you want to visit that, I probably need to bring Quincy in. But there's some HVAC replacements, some interior cameras, and then the parking lot safety bollards, and then Wing Haven bollards. So there's a few items in here, but when you add them up, it's not a lot of money. But could we reduce the $1,813,000 to get us closer to the balanced budget? Sure. That's what the board would like us to do. We definitely could take a look at that and defer a few of those items. The IT budget, which was, excuse me. Yeah. I'm going to bolt into. There it is. Yeah, it's on this page.
Yeah.
So Zach is prepared to talk about these items. I'm just giving you the context of where that falls. So once again, if you go back to the 2026 budget page, you go down to technology and telecommunications. There's under the 2026 budget, the $1,354,195. That's what this page breaks out in more detail, what that's the number is. We don't have active, and it's pretty self-explanatory. I don't know if Beck needs to go through that, but the board he's prepared to talk through these items, but it's one of the items that historically we've had IT percent of the budget. What the answer, let's look at it as budget in 2025 was $1,307,290. It's $1,354,195. It went up very, very little. So there's really a whole lot that you need additional detail, and if it's worth the time having that go through each one of these items, but it's really up to your discretion. If you want to hear more about it.
I just have a question about managed services that just in terms of the size, it's doubling last year.
The managed services, the
Yeah.
biggest item is managed print. So remember, that was approved, I think, 2 meetings ago by the board. And that basically takes all our printers into a fleet and ultimately results in a savings. So that is,
I remember that now. Yes, thank you.
and so yes, it is a hit in next year's budget, but over time it results in a significant cost savings to the organization.
Thank you.
Any questions at this point in the, where we're at with the budget?
Yes,
All right,
ready?
I'm ready.
Um, in fiscal 2025, we projected for capital, we projected to spend almost $800,000 for central services, and we've only spent 100. Looking back in the document from last year, it looks like we had 3 vehicle replacements for 200,000, and we had the managed print services program for 200,000 for those 2 items, which kind of most of the central services. Well, I guess there's also the overhead paging system, second floor carpet and window sills painting, and staff area restructuring for a total of 755.
Mhm.
But we only spent 111,000. So if you can, you don't have to do it today. If you could provide me like what we haven't done this year for central services and why we're $600,000 under, that would be
Yeah.
helpful.
So some of what we're in the process of doing, like the overhead paging that wiring that just completed last week.
Okay. But we're gonna see some more costs
You'll see
roll in.
more costs. What do you think?
My question, my problem with that then is that the fiscal year 2025 forecast should be what we expect to spend. And if we're only expecting to spend 111,000, even though we know that work is being completed, we should see that number be higher. You see what I'm saying? Yeah,
That number right there.
so we're saying that, hey, we're only expecting, if I'm reading this correctly and how I believe forecast numbers should be
Yeah,
presented.
you're correct on that.
Okay,
Let me
all right.
pull up
Um,
this report here real quick. Please. The next question while I look that up real quick.
what's that?
Do you have another question?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
I got plenty.
Well, keep going. I'll listen,
be here.
listen and read real quick if I have an answer on that one, on that 111.
I mean, I'm glad to hear that or see that Middendorf Cordell is gonna be under budget for capital projects by $420,000. But we've included in next year's capital plan, $65,000 for furniture. If we're under this year for capital, why aren't we just buying the furniture with the savings that we had on the project?
That's furniture that has been ordered as part of the renovation. And we will not receive until after the fiscal year, so it will be. But 65,000 essentially been committed and obligated, but we won't receive it, so we can't actually bill against this fiscal year. We build against next fiscal year.
Okay, so are we cash basis or accrual basis? So either way, regardless of that, I would expect to see transfers in from a previous fiscal year into the next year to cover that.
Yeah, so there's. And I haven't gone through each and every one of them. There's 1,895,278 of expenditures that
Correct,
were anticipated to occur in 2025.
right?
Not gonna, that either will lapse into 2026 or will not occur completely.
Correct. 1,400,000 is what I see. That's right. Right here, the variance between what we are forecasting, what we budgeted gives us a difference of 1.4 million.
Yeah,
So the 1.4 million is gonna go, ultimately it goes into fund balance,
yes,
then we're gonna use fund balance in the next year. So really, we're splitting hairs here.
yep.
I'll let that one go, but I just I hate to see that we're spending money on furniture when we have a project that we just completed. And then we're like, oh yeah, we need more stuff for Middendorf Cordell.
It was in the original plan. It just couldn't be delivered in.
Right, right, okay, that helps. On page 2 of your document, of the 26 budget. There's a line towards the bottom of operations and technology debt service. We budgeted 0 for debt service, yet we're paying $454,000 against principal and interest.
Just explain that.
So there was a change in the accounting rules, and Julie, if
Okay,
could explain this better. So any of our subscriptions
got
need to be
it. That's
considered
right.
as a
That's
debt
right.
service.
That's right.
And so that was thing first moved over to a debt service, so we're based on that.
Okay, so
Yes.
got it. So then why wouldn't we budget for that in 2026, knowing that we have those same subscriptions, which you've kind of shown on the IT budget of 543,000? I'm sure some of that is applicable and some of it isn't. Why wouldn't we budget for that in that line item as opposed to having zeros and then just come back in and put it in there?
That's good. That's good. I think that's let me talk to Julie about that one, and I will send a reply out to you all. Same thing on the investment earnings of that T24 number, which I think is a little bit low. Julie on?
Julie's on.
Oh, Julie,
Yeah.
can you answer that question?
You guys could sure.
No, Julie.
I forgot Julie was on.
It's more fun. It's a question, John.
Really? Are you there? Julie, you'll need to unmute yourself probably.
I know. She's been talking to us.
Yeah, it's
hour.
like 30 minutes now. We just left her.
You can keep messaging her.
I
I've
will.
got more questions for John.
Okay.
That will then Julie was here, so we may have answers for it. The revenue line, on that same page, the top line, we're projecting budgeting 24.3 million. That's the estimates from the collector's office.
Yeah, that's from the county.
Okay, so we will receive a updated number
In
when September, yeah, okay, all right, so we won't really. It's unfortunate that our budget years are
Oh,
On or off
and you can see
because-
that
right.
there's 184,559
right.
difference between what we had when the budget was prepared in 25 versus what we actually received.
And the challenge is being a reassessment year and the senior tax freeze program. There's a multitude of kind of things that are affecting that we may have better version more information. Go ahead.
I don't know if the word is gotten here, but I read a summary of the legislative session, and it looks like the General Assembly passed a amendment to the library laws so that a consolidated library district can change its fiscal year.
Oh.
Which under current law is July 1 to June 30. So I don't propose to dwell in the weeds tonight, but if there is an operational improvement that can be realized by changing the fiscal year, we should be thinking about.
The only, a couple things, and it looks like we're getting, we weren't allowing Julie to talk, but we're working on that. I think one thing is we're essentially borrowing from our fund balance for the first half of our fiscal year until we start to receive property tax dollars from the county in January. So when we look at our fund balance number, we need to be careful to note that we need enough in there to float the first half of the year.
Okay.
So when we start looking at, so that's one thing that would be a benefit I could see. I mean, it would be a nightmare for staff to have to do an 18-month budget or something that next time around. No, it's 6 month for the US Congress. So,
I agree with that, Matthew. I think the focus should really be on the revenue itself and how we need to be able to continue to fund the reserve.
Yep.
As opposed to the fiscal year, because I think our estimates, we're a simplistic organization. We're not a complicated city as far as estimating that being on a July through June fiscal year. So I don't think that's an issue. And I spoke with John, and We discussed the senior tax freeze. We don't, at least for the coming year, it's most likely not going to be a significant impact on us again. It's our size. I think a larger concern and effort should be on what that revenue looks like in the future so that we can cover our operating expenditures and have a balanced budget.
Absolutely. So going back then, was there an item that I
So Julie, on the debt service, we had the negative 454, 663 for this year because of the transfer of those service contracts. We need to add a number in for the fiscal year 26 budget.
So for fiscal 25, I had to update that to put in the right category. So for fiscal 26, and that's not complete, it will be by June year end, so it shows the correct debt service number. For the budget, I deliberately, since this is a draft, I budgeted the items that would go into the debt service into the appropriate expense category, just so you could tell what that is as opposed to just rolling it all together. So for fiscal 24, we had our Turner rent, our Town of Augusta rent, our Avaya phone system, and our Polaris catalog that were all treated as lease or financing agreements. And those 4 items, if you look at the audited fiscal 24 statement, are in the debt service line. So for purposes of just this draft, I left the Polaris in the software subscriptions, the Avaya's in the telecom, the rents are in the rent line. But for the next version, I will move those amounts out of those lines and put them in debt service. I just wanted it not to confuse you as to what is making up that debt service line.
that makes total sense. So the original budget of 1.3 for technology and telecommunications really was 820 when you pull out most of the 454 out of that.
Yes.
Okay. Next question is related to Deer Run's capital budget. So in the 2025 document, we have a facility or capital plan outlined by branch by year, one of the last pages. So for 2026, we show back in 2025 budget, we show for 2026 having about $2 million worth of capital expenditures per branch. Now that we have the draft version of the 26 budget, we're going to show about 1.8 million in expenditures. So we're under what we originally projected in 2025. The biggest difference, though, that I've noticed when you look at all the branches is Deer Run's. We have in the draft 153,000 for 2026. But we showed that Deer Run was going to be 376,000 expenditure. So I'm just curious, there's $210,000 there worth of capital expenditures that are not being done. I'm just curious what those are.
So I'm trying to find my schedule, just one moment. So you're saying you're looking at fiscal 25 and Deer Run, for fiscal 25, Deer Run only had restroom partition replacement. So are you talking about central services?
No, so in the 2025 budget document, Deer Run for 2026 was projected to have 376,000.
Okay. Okay, so I'm looking at Deer Run in fiscal 26.
Correct.
The 153,500 versus just the 15,000 restroom partition replacement. So the reason if you want me to explain the difference here, so the restroom renovation, we started with the partition strictly, But what we found was if you replace the partition, it's affecting the tile, and there's other issues that are part of the structural piece of that restroom that need to be changed. So that's why we did not pursue the partitions last year, or sorry, in fiscal 25. And we put a renovation in fiscal 26. So the public furniture, tables and chairs, that was an addition from my purchasing manager after discussing with the regional manager. Audiovisual system replacement, that's something that is actually across branches that's been discussed repeatedly, and Zach is in charge of our AV replacements across the district. Exterior camera additions, that was after review by my safety and security manager to make sure that we're covering all of our parking lots, the backs of our buildings. We had some gaps there. And then, of course, the parking lot safety bollards, because we had 2 different people this year jump the curb in front of our building.
Okay, so when we were putting together the 2025 budget, were we anticipating a larger expense on the restroom renovation?
We were not, because we thought we could just address the partition. We weren't, going to structurally touch the building yet, but after looking at the restrooms and the need and the structure, we knew that it just couldn't be the partitions. We couldn't do it piecemeal. We don't want to. It's all or nothing.
Sure, so there's somewhere there was $220,000 worth of capital stuff that we projected to spend in 2026 that we no longer have a need for.
I'm trying to pull up that spreadsheet, where we deferred some of those capital items.
Facilities.
And
Well, let me ask, okay, let me do it better. This will maybe hopefully bring it all home. If we could be provided the 5-year capital forecast by branch document for 2026 through 2030, that would be helpful.
So right now you've got, and you will have that. I'm sorry, I had an injury and I've been out.
Yeah.
So
No worries.
Yep. I don't have the current document updated. That is actually, across the branches, the second document of our financial report that you look at each month. That does have
but I think what Matthew wants to see is the not it rolled up like we have in that. So
Okay. Rolled up.
you can see the itemized details of each one of these items before they're rolled up into a sum by branch,
I'm
which
still not
is
sure what you're referring to as far as
the Google sheet that we were working on that shows all that.
Look at your chat.
Look at my chat. Thank you, Zach. I knew you'd save the day.
Yeah, I'm not sure what forecast number you're looking at. As far as the fiscal 25 forecast, I know that you spoke to that. I still need to update that. I'll be closing the month of May shortly, and I'll be able to look more thoroughly after our capital projects meeting to see where we're going to end up at year end. That $65,000 as far as the MK furniture, that was something that was ordered. We know based on shipping, it won't arrive until fiscal 26. It's just hanging out there. We can't accrue it if we haven't received it. So.
Right. Yeah. I'm looking at just to help you, I'm looking at page 9 of the fiscal year 2025 budget PDF document.
Okay, so
Of the budget up. Okay.
that was the roof. The 222 was the roof that we had estimated, and we pushed it back to 2027 at year run.
Okay.
And so what would be
Okay.
helpful is we can
Yes.
send this out. So this shows, this spreadsheet shows the 26, 27, 28, 29, 30 year. And basically what we had to do is push some of these items back, as you can see, in
Okay.
order to meet the capital. So this is, I think, what the detail you're looking for.
You kind of, but you're kind of getting to the next thing, because if you look at the 5-year capital forecast by branch from the 25 budget, years 27, 28, and 29 are significantly lower than the last couple of years, because we did obviously some major, work on our facilities. Oh, you're talking 600,000 in 27, 135,000 in 28, and 153,000 in 29. My only thing was, and you know this, John, from from the county, it's really helpful to try to make our costs even in our capital budget across those 5 years, so that we're not having a big year of a big spend and then a very little small spend. And then another, like, it's nice to be able to kind of say, oh, we're gonna spend about $1 million annually.
Yes, 3.72.
Right, so when we start looking at, at the beginning of your presentation here, John, we look at, we say, okay, yeah, this year, because we're spending 1.8 mil, we plan on spending $1.8 million in capital, we're gonna have a deficit of 1.2 million. But next year, we have $600,000 worth of expenses in capital, which now brings that budget almost to balanced. Because there will be a COLA or something that, costs will go up, et cetera. But then we go down to 135,000 in 2028, and really, I don't see big adjustments needing to be made to the facilities that I want to make sure that they're not in their blind spot, like we're not missing something, that we're gonna have a big expense for something. But from the next 3 years, almost 4 years, there's very small amounts of capital expenditures, and which seem to be the thing that brings us to a deficit spending discussion.
So I will update that document. That's something that I create in conjunction with my facilities manager. So we've been looking at this. We did an assessment to begin with, and we've been looking at it for 10 years. So
Yep.
we know these buildings very well, Cliffview being the last one up and the renovated MK, obviously. So when you're talking about big expenditures, it's us managing basically the big items, whether it's all of the parking lot, if it needs mill and overlay, all the HVAC units, we've brought those up to date over 10 years, for the most part. But again, you've got major expenses. If Spencer's, that building was done 2012. So that's where you're seeing those pieces. You see roofs, those are major expenses, or something happens with the building envelope. We have those concentrated areas truly that cost a lot, obviously, or whether it's the sliding automatic doors outside of renovations, whether, we've pushed them off or not. Those are the big pieces. And yes, they've been scheduled out. An example of something we've pushed off just because of the amount of dollars was Corporate Parkway. But, you have so many leaks. We did Wing Haven, now we're doing Corporate Parkway to maintain that roof. So we do certainly know basically length of life of the items. We do a lot of preventive maintenance. We know what our HVAC, what's happening with that. So I think we've gotten quite good at judging when something's going to go down and whether, we can get some more life out of it, or if it's a necessity that it be done.
Absolutely, Julie. I think you've done a great job with this document and the facilities assessment of kind of going through and figuring out what all we need to do in our facilities. I think you've done a great job with that. My only, I guess, comment would be if there's something that we could defer 1 year from this year because we have a low capital dollar next year, and it may not be low anymore because we've deferred other things now, right? So having that updated spreadsheet will be very, very helpful in determining, can we go just 1 more year and push that off and equalize the capital amounts, which then helps overall our financial position. So getting that document would be very helpful.
Yeah. So what I'll share with you real quick on that is, and this is work in progress. And obviously the 25 has the more detailed sheet, the 26 draft does not. The number of 1.8 million for 26 is what is put in place based on the items that are shown.
Mhm.
The 27 estimate, by pushing and looking at the items of looking at basically what are the needed, what are those critical items, is at essentially 1.2 million. And if you look at the 28 forecast, you're again at 1,131,000. So those first 3 years, we've kind of done a better job of building out. And 29 is where you really see the decrease, and 30 and 31. And so those years were not quite where we need to be on figuring out what those items will be. But I think what's useful is if we want to say capital spending, again, this gets into those categories, is that we as a district want to spend around $1 million or $1.5 million in capital. We can adjust those items, because the things that are not included on this capital plan are items that have been talked about in plan. We moved to a centralized desk at Spencer and Indoor Purdell. And so the thought was that eventually we'd do that same philosophy in our other branches. So you have one Ask Me desk so that when someone comes in the door, they have that simple point of service. Well, that would require more work at, say, a McClay branch or Pisker or those type of branches. And those are not built into this at all. Those are things that would actually help with operations, help with service. That we can build into the capital plan if that's where the board wants to say. Just haven't done that yet.
Any other questions from the board on this document?
One thing I want to share with the board though, have you passed out? Okay, just as a benchmark. So one thing guys would ask me to do is kind of look at where we can have the library districts. So right now, as we said in 2026, we're 67%, 16%, 12, or 17%. For the base categories. St. Louis County, we're very comparable. They're at 68.1% in salary and benefits, materials 15.1, average technology 16.8. Mid-Continent, which is across on the Kansas City side, is their salary and benefits are more at that 60.6%, materials 17, operation technology 22. And then Springfield Green, 63.4, 15.8, 23. So we're in the right range in the allocation. It's just whether how much are we spending? Are we comfortable with how much we're spending and how do we want it? I just had to go.
All right, the next item on our work session is the review of the Missouri Public Library Standards, Section 7, Technology.
Yeah, that one?
Sure.
Right. Good to see you all again. I know. It's much higher up here. So the Missouri Standards Technology, we've gone through this. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. I would like to point out that this document is what you got here. I'd like to point out that we are exemplary in pretty much every category. So I think that is something to really note with the IT team specifically. So call that out. But we do have two areas where we are not. I'd like to talk to you about those two areas. And when I explain, I think that'll really help you. So what is this? 7.2.12 and 7.2.13. The library having a standalone mobile app, and then the library having an app such as Simply E, which is an app that combines all of your electronic resources in one location. So our catalog, the Polaris, and our website through Stacks is mobile friendly. So what that means is if you log on to it with your phone, it's going to readjust to work on your phone. So between that and the ease of use and how Polaris integrates with our other e-resources where it takes you to the apps that you're going to have to go to anyways, over or Libby and Hoopla, anything like that, we really would be wasted money if we were to invest in that. So it's really we're saving the library money by having the catalog and the website that we currently have.
If you search the catalog from the site, regardless of what device you're on, it's responsive.
Yes.
It pulls the result and the app in which you use to access that material. So if you click on that, it's going to ask you to open Hoopla. Or, okay.
Yeah, and what's really great too is, and we've talked about this, is when you look on, if you're on a mobile device or on your PC, it will give you the listing. So if you're looking for Stephen King's new title, Never Flinch, it'll give you a listing of the physical book, the large print, the audio book, and the e-media book. So depending on what you want, you can select it from there. So if you want the e-media, then it will take you to our overdrive sorry, Libby, keep calling it overdrive, but it'll take you there. But if you want the physical copy, it'll take you to where you can reserve it.
There's an easy way to meet this criteria without going crazy. So
Okay,
I'll chat with you later about it.
okay,
There's
yeah.
a it's. Okay,
I was just looking last week. Right?
Did it have like?
the
Yeah.
website.
And we have
Yeah.
that, and we have directions of how to do that too.
Well, a lot of people use an app that essentially just pulls the website open when you open it.
Right, yeah.
But it's not like a link on your homepage where you click on it and it pulls up in your browser. This is an app that just shows you the mobile version of the website, which is kind of a
The app store.
cheating, but
That's what,
so when you click on that, can you click on that?
well,
There is an app.
right now not working.
Okay, but
So-
that pulled open your Safari.
What?
When you clicked on that, that pulled open your Safari.
Yeah.
That's a bookmark to a website.
Exactly.
All right. So, can you mention again what Simply E is?
So Simply E is just specifically for e-resources. So that could be the big ones that you would know would be Libby and Hoopla, but also EBSCO or any other resources. But again, through our catalog, you can just select e-resources.
Right.
And that'll take you right there. So it's not saving us any.
Yeah.
And really, Simply E, this, I don't remember, I'm sorry, I don't remember when the standards were updated last. 22. So that was something that was bigger then than it is now. If you look up Simply E, I know New York Public Library uses it, but I don't know of many others that actually utilize that, so. And I don't know if they're still, how much they're supporting it, using it, so. So really to summarize, the IT department is really great.
That's true.
We won't hold those two no's against you.
Right. I just want you to know though, it is us saving money, so.
Oh, certainly. And it's almost a unnecessary requirement from the standards, to be honest, but
I
That's a
agree.
shame.
I don't know what their update cycle is. It would not surprise me if they remove those two
mhm,
in the next update cycle.
Okay.
All right.
Excellent. Any questions for Zach?
All right.
Thanks, Zach. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
All right, there's no other business before us for the work session, so we shall sit in recess for 3 minutes until 7 o'clock. of the St. Charles City County Library Board of Trustees for May 28th. First, we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by the roll call. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If we could do a roll call?
Trustee Zucker,
Here.
trustee Harden,
Here.
Here. trustee Giordano, here, trustee Collier,
Here.
trustee Seeds,
Here.
trustee Tillman, trustee Montrinock.
Here.
Trustee Hazelwood. We do have a quorum.
All right, we have a quorum. The first item is public comments, and we've got two, one for agenda items. I assume one for non-agenda items here, both the same person. So Arnie, you want to tackle your both of your items? Sure. Give you 6 minutes. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, members of the Board of Directors or Board of Trustees. My name is Arnie C. AC Dinoff, I'm the Library Public Advocate. First of all, one of the trustees mentioned in the workshop about the changing the fiscal year. That only deals with a small, minute portion of library districts across Missouri. There's about 6 or 7 categories of library districts. We don't fall in the consolidated library district caveat. And so that only applies to, I believe it's, could potentially apply to 3 or 4 districts throughout the state, but we wouldn't qualify. We'd have to go to the General Assembly and have to have additional legislation to change the fiscal year and change the state statute with libraries. On the consent agenda items, I want to bring up the City of St. Charles sent you a letter, I believe on April 30th. About the South Point Development Project on River Drive. They want to sell $72 million in industrial revenue bonds, which would be a savings for the developer, which would pay a reduced amount of interest rate. They're asking for no tax abatement, so it's a good sign for our district. And I testified at this public hearing before the St. Charles City Council. They are, however, asking for sales tax exemption on construction materials. And that is not going to apply to our district, but just in case you want to know, there will be exempt of 4.225% of the state sales tax, 1.725% for the county, 2% for the city, any savings for the developer of $2,032 in both sales tax and online use tax purchases of construction materials. The city of O'Fallon, and this one I really have some real heartburn with. The city of O'Fallon has the Aldi warehouse project. They sent you a letter, I believe, on April 28th to the district. They are selling $100 million in industrial revenue bonds for a foreign corporation, a foreign company, for a 127,000 square foot expansion at the corner of Missouri 79 and I-70. They purport to only create 30 to 33 jobs. And so they want a 50% tax abatement, which means forgiveness for corporate welfare, in my opinion. They're for the district, it cuts down to $16,295 tax cut of their taxes for each year, which would be $207,174 loss of revenue to the library district through 2038. They also want $22 million worth of personal property tax exemptions, which would cost the district about, I believe it's $27,000 over the 12-year period. I oppose this project. I see that you sent a letter. I wish somebody would have been at the public hearing before the O'Fallon City Council. We need to change the state law and make the library district exempt, like the fire districts and the ambulance districts are. See here. So moving on to the budget, there were a couple things that I heard on the way over here that really concern me. The $430,000 or $433,000 in overages for employees. That is quite concerning. And so I believe we have a hierarchy here, and I believe some of the cabinet members, we can look into cutting. I don't know that they're really necessary, some of the job titles that we have. So we really need to be cognizant of that $433,000 overages on salaries. Let's see here. Another thing that came up was the Deer Run and the capital improvement projects. I employ each and every one of you to go and look at the restrooms at Deer Run. They're in immaculate shape and condition. I don't see any problems with them. I don't see any deficiencies. I don't see any problems. I don't see any flooding. It looks like a brand new bathroom, to be honest, and I would hate for us to waste taxpayer dollars once again. Then moving on to the new renovated facility on Missouri Highway K, the Cradell Library. The $38,000 that was spent by the board on the automatic sliding doors, I really don't feel that that was needed. I've never seen them broken down. I've never seen them in an inoperable position. I believe that they're not that old to begin with. I think they're about 6 or 7 years old. And I don't understand why we spent that $38,000. As the branch opened, I was gonna reach out to the director to see if we could get a power wash of the outside of the building. It's very dusty, the outside of the building. The sign is very dusty and dingy and needs to be power washed. The signs need to be power washed. I think that can be handled inside by the custodial staff, the person that I see there driving a district Tahoe. I think we do own a power wash machine, I believe. So I'd like to see that done. I'd also like to see at this facility some landscape sprucing, some upgrades on the landscaping to make it a little bit more attractive to the public. See, I talked about the Deer Run restrooms. I think that was everything on my agenda. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. All right, the next item on the agenda is reports and correspondence. We'll start with the chief. Well, I guess, are we going through each one of these still, or are we wanting highlights from members? What's that? Highlights? Highlights? Okay. Julie, you have any highlights on your report?
I do not. If you have questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Perfect. Anybody have any questions related to budget summary or details that were submitted? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to highlights for Chief Communication Engagement Officer.
Just two quick. One, thank you to those of you and everyone who supported the trivia night. 400 people. It was a very successful event for us, and we appreciate your efforts in coming out and joining us. And then a date, save the date for June 10th, 6 to 8 p.m. for Chicken and Pickle. And that is a fundraiser for the foundation. We'd love to see you there.
Any questions? But do you have a comment on trivia?
You got robbed.
Yeah, we did not do well.
I know somebody on the winning team.
Yeah.
Those are two different stories. We were cheated and we did not do well.
Kind of one covers the other.
All right, next up.
It was best food at your table.
Oh, yeah.
But it was
a false more.
Yes,
his wife.
my wife is
See,
phenomenal.
she's, how you got her name? That food was great.
All right.
Like couple days, 4 or 5 days.
Nice, nice. We have plenty. We might still have some left. All right, the Chief Administrative Officer report. Any highlights?
Only highlights, summer challenge starts on June 2nd. And we're doing lunch at the library again in partnership with Operation Food Search. That's going to be at the Captain Linman branch beginning on June 2nd as well. And then an upcoming date, we'd love to have everybody at the St. Louis Symphony concert. And all of that has been sponsored and supported by the foundation. So we're really excited that's coming up. It's going to be on June 9th.
Any questions, comments related to that? All right, Chief Executive Officer report.
The two things one thing I'll highlight is the opening of Midorf Cradell. We had a sneak peek with the elected officials. And we invited all elected officials of St. Charles County, and we got a small group there. but that small group was important. There were some House representatives there. We had Mayor O'Fallon, and so that was a nice group. We had a county council member there. And then we had the grand opening with the chamber, and we had a nice crowd. Appreciate that. We had a good turnout. It was very, it was actually covered by two of the new local news media, Fox 2 and Channel 4. So to get local press, especially TV coverage of an opening of a library facility, a reopening of a library facility, I think was just really a big win for us. So appreciate all the work of our employees that kind of shift their work schedule, work location, and kind of just help throughout the whole process of making that those two projects, the reopening at Spencer and reopening at MK, so successful.
Yeah, I think a big shout out. I want to echo that. Big shout out to the staff who were, rehomed, if you will, during that construction project. Thank you to everybody who stuck through it, and it's a great facility. It was great to be there and see that soft opening and see the pictures of the ribbon cutting. So thank you for that, John. Statistical report.
All right, statistical report. This is the standard statistical report. There are a couple things I would like to point out. So year to date, library visits we're at 932,804. That is concerning me. That is less than, we are not on track to hit our numbers for 2024. Probably due to the closure of Turkey and K. That is something that I think as we go forward, we need to really make sure that we get the word out that we're open, provide high customer services, and we increase our foot traffic, especially as we're going into fiscal year 26. We set a target of trying to, we've seen our foot traffic decrease fairly steadily, and then, obviously with COVID in 2020, we've not fully reached back. So the goal move forward is to recover from the loss of foot traffic. The other concerning number I have on here is circulation. We're at 4.8 million pieces. It's also down from last year. So when you look at kind of measures that are very high level, the number of people we have in the door and the amount of materials that they borrow are two critical pieces. And so we've been talking about that as a team about how do we try to reverse those trends, and hopefully we'll have better strategies and we can have results as we start tracking that more detailed process. This report we are looking at changing. Brianna is working on dashboards so that the data will be live. We'll obviously do a printout for the board, but we're hoping to be able to have where you guys can see this data and be able to drill into it through a dashboard that would be more interactive for the board members, but also some that we can use at staff level to make decisions. So we can see trends in real time and start making better decisions based on the data that we're collecting. We collect a lot of data as an organization. A lot of things on spreadsheets and a lot of pieces of paper. Trying to get that on electronic dashboard, I think will be beneficial for us, but hopefully to the board as well.
What are you using for the dashboard?
Studio.
You mentioned you collect data now as pen and paper. You're getting like
Mixture.
So how quickly do you expect the data to be transformed from the input to digital, the dashboard, to be able to make those decisions or look at the data as live as possible?
You able to answer that on the few things that you
The live stream too, so I can only hear, I don't want to hear. As soon as reports are updated, within 15 minutes it'll be on Looker Studio. I can set it to update as soon as we want. It's very similar to Power BI.
Okay.
If you're familiar with that.
Absolutely.
It's just Google's platform of that.
Okay.
Very free, very easy to operate.
Okay.
So it's just setting the frequency of how often we want to update our reports.
So, sorry to interrupt you. Are you so you're using like a Google Sheet then that people
Yeah,
update?
I have Google Sheets, Excel,
Got
and I can pull from website data, so like
Yeah.
our Google Analytics from our website. I'm
Okay.
using multiple sources in there,
Got
so
it. So is
whatever
it-
makes sense for everybody else, I'm trying to make it as easy as possible.
Got it. So when we were talking about gate counts,
Mhm.
is that the branch manager's responsibility to upload that on the Google spreadsheet that day?
Yeah, or how often we set that.
Right.
They do it, and I've got my formulas in there, and it can be updated.
Okay, great. Thank you.
we are looking at, are there opportunities to make that like an API so it can be more automated? We're not there yet.
Well, sure, but you'd have to have some kind of electronic gathering of that.
Circulation, no, there are,
Oh, sure.
do have things that
Mhm.
are allow us to do that. We're just not quite there yet. Some of those things require budget or ability to do so. So this is the kickoff. We look forward to hopefully do a presentation to the board in June.
Yeah.
It's in 2 weeks, so we're hoping to kind of kick that off in the next meeting. At least give you a view of what circulation and gate count would look like.
Great, excellent, thank you. Any other questions related to the almost deprecated report? All right, correspondence. We do have 3 letters as mentioned in public comment that came in. Would note that in, as mentioned, the city of St. Charles, that is a sales tax item, and it really does not affect the library district per se in terms of the sales tax. All the next proposed development project that we received a letter on, there is a payment in lieu of taxes, so we are receiving a pilot on that, which does help cover some of the abatement over the life of the project. Looks like the pilot is $234,000. We would originally expect just to get $100,000 from this existing property over the course of that project. So we are getting some of the projected increases. However, if the project did not have an abatement on it over the course of the project, we would receive $376,000 on that property. So it is still, quote, a loss of $141,000 of income over the life of that project. But it is good to see at least a pilot in there. We have not been lucky to receive those in the past, so definitely appreciate that. Let's see here. I think that's all that we have, right? Related to those? Yeah. Okay, next, any statements, comments related to those items? None. The next items on the agenda are the consent agenda. We have minutes for approval from April 15, 2025. Will entertain a motion?
Yeah. I'll move to approve the minutes.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Guys appear to have, the ayes do have it. The motion carries and the consent agenda is approved. The next item we have is the formal agenda. We have no unfinished business. Exciting, and we have one item for new business, which is the 2025 budget adjustments. Have you or Julie or any question, or I guess
Julie put together a memo to the back pack. The adjustments are relatively straightforward. I don't know if we need to go, if you want us to go through them one by one, or if you have any questions on it. They are essentially those end of the year adjustments basically.
and Julie, these were included in the document that we looked over at the work session, right?
The adjustments have not been made to the revised budget, or sorry, to the budget column yet. Not until approval. I will change that column and I'll change the monthly financial statements to reflect it if it's approved. This is just a reallocation of funding. It's not asking for additional budget. It's just
Right.
obviously moving.
But they're recognized in the forecasted budget line item, right? Or forecasted line.
It will be. It hasn't been done because this hasn't been approved.
Okay,
So the budget is in the it's part of the forecast, but I would say that it's going to be the fiscal 25 budget column is going to be a revised budget column.
okay, got it. Questions related to this?
I do have a question
Sure.
on item 2.
Yep.
Talks about increased bank and merchant processing fees. Are we paying those or are the patrons paying those?
So the bank fees are basically our US bank fees and they're associated with the protections on our accounts, et cetera. There is offsetting, this is an expense, obviously. There is offsetting, income that we're making off of the accounts. And they basically offset when you look at that. But as far as merchant processing fees, those are patron related and they're their credit and debit card usage in our branches. And no, we are not actually passing those fees along at this time.
I just got one at my firm that passes those things along, and is that something that then could be done here as well?
We could be, all right, certainly, we could do that. That is a point of discussion. So we know, basically what to communicate to our customers. That was discussed when we first implemented the credit card processing machines. So it can be, I think, looked at again, especially since we've got our managed print services project that will be implemented shortly, and that is going to be it will allow for credit card usage. In the past, we were using coins, obviously, so we'll see an increase of processing fees.
Okay, thank you.
And Julie, we have a minimum processing fee regardless of what the dollar amount is, up to a certain amount, right?
We do not set a minimum charge as far as offsetting that. We do not do that either.
Sure, but if a patron spends $1.50 on copies or on the print shop, we pay, like, we'll say 42 cents. But if it was $6, it may still be 42 cents based on the percentage, right?
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions? Then I will entertain a motion for this item, which is at the bottom of the page.
Move the approval of the 2025 budget adjustments. At agenda item 25-28.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second?
A second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Guys appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The item is approved. We have no other items on the regular agenda for this meeting. So I will entertain a motion to go into closed session pursuant to state statute RSMO 610.0213 personnel. So moved. Motion, is there a second? Motion and a second. Can we have a roll call?
Steve Zucker,
Aye.
trustee Harden,
Aye.
trustee Gardner,
Aye.
Giordano. Aye. Trustee Collier.
Aye.
Trustee Monternack.
Aye.
All right. We will wait for the room.